2017, she was invited to provide media literacy training for students and adults nationally and internationally. For the Senate Youth Leadership Program, winners of the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship Program, Poland, the Chautauqua Institution, Miss InfoCon England, and Reuters. She leads workshops at conferences given by the American Alliance of Museums, the National Council for the Social Studies, and the National Association of Media Literacy and Education. She works to promote access to literacy resources as a member of the steering committee for the North American subchapter of GAPNO, a UNESCO organization that promotes media and information literacy worldwide. She also serves on the board of the SYTA Youth Foundation, which helps at-risk students participate in educational travel programs. Barbara is a former middle and high school teacher. Her team has been recognized by the Journalism Education Association, the National Council for the Social Studies, and the Education Commission for the states for their contributions to the teaching of history and news and media literacy. To say the least, it is truly an honor and a privilege to have Barbara here today, and we thank her for her willingness to share her time amid an incredibly busy international travel schedule. Please join me in welcoming Barbara McCormack to the stage.
Good. I told them to work on my mic here so I didn't blow you away. I can be a loud gal sometimes. I forgot to put my bookmarks out for you. Hello, good morning. How is everyone? Excellent. I'm so excited to be here this morning, and I'm really honored that I was invited. Thank you, and of course, Shane and Joe. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, I have some good information to share, something that you'll be able to use. That's my goal. Give them something that you can take out and apply right away. Right? You guys are busy folks. So let's see where this slide we're on. Here we go. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide quickly. For those of you who don't know about the museum, hopefully you've heard of us, but for those of you who have not, we are located in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania Avenue. We're between the Supreme Court, the Capitol, and the White House. The front of our building, etched in stone, is the First Amendment. We are committed to the principles of the First Amendment. On site, every year I teach about 25,000 students, give or take. Those are the students that actually sit in our chairs. We reach about 10 million more through our online efforts at museumed.org.
Video.
Museum Ed is part of the Freedom Forum Institute, just in case you haven't heard of them. They are the think tank. They are the education arm of the museum. And they're the ones who do all of the education programming. All right? So we know who we are. Fabulous. Let's talk about today's media landscape. I'm missing a slide. Did you skip a slide? No, we're not missing one. All right, quick. Let me make sure that you're awake and everything is and moving and going. We're going to do a little activity here. Star Spangled Dancing. July 2012, many people posted a dance about the accomplishments of the dance that accompanies the national anthem. Do you believe it or not? Real quick, you can do it to yourself. All right, next slide. Not. This was not real. Can you advance it one more time? Although it looks like we might be showing my notes. I don't know. I think we're showing my notes in this, which is not going to be fun. We'll see. We'll see on the next one. We'll test on the next one. All right, but if you go back to that, the not. Okay, so how many people believe this? This Onion article. You can go forward one more. Believe this. Okay, you might have had me at there was a dance, but if you had seen this illustration and both legs are parallel to the ground, I might have had a suspicion, because then the majority of us, I would beg to say that we are not then very patriotic, because I don't know how many of us can get up there and sustain that. But despite the Onion being a satirical magazine and paper, and it claims to be so, and this kind of crazy dance moves, people believed it. And they were upset and said, to see what's happening to our country, people don't know these dance moves anymore. Terrible. So today's information landscape, you can agree with me, it is fast-paced, It's entertaining. It's breaking. Everything is breaking, whether it's really not. We're polarized now more than ever. There seems to be outside influence on our content. And it's note this example that I have here, the polarized. How many of you have seen that? There's a few of you. It's still getting around. It's been getting around for years. This is the Seattle Seahawks football team in their locker room dancing with a burning American flag. I do have to tell everyone that's really not. Okay? I do that just in case, because some of you might be like, oh, can you believe they did that? They didn't. This was Photoshopped. It was a celebration of a victory that someone took that and then Photoshopped this in here to create havoc. They know that the take a knee movement was very controversial. So they're like, ooh, this will get people upset if I just make a claim that this whole movement really is about standing against the U.S., which in our American flag, which we know was not true. So do we agree this is kind of what we look like today? All right. Real quick, I think we need to agree on a definition before we go any further. All right? Fake news. It's real simple. They're lies. It's not true. It's made up. All right? And it's often made to look like news. These tabloids have existed for years. We also know fake news is not new. I bet back in cave drawings, if someone was to go back and look at them, they would see tips, points of manipulation, mis and disinformation. So it's not new. Let's look at what it is. The next one. My team, they like to add new slides for me so I don't get bored, but then they mess me up. So what it's not, it is not biased news. Some of us like to think that biased news is fake. It's not. Bias comes with its own issues. Twisting the facts has its own problems, but it's not fake. It's someone's perspective, as you can see here. Sloppy reporting. So mistakes in reporting. Again, it has its own problems, but it's not fake news. Here, this is an image of Robert Mugabe's house. The citizen identified this house as Robert Mugabe's, but it's not. It's Dr. Dre's. So the facts were wrong. Again, the story was right, the image was wrong. That's sloppy reporting, but it's not fake news. And negative news is not fake news. A lot of politicians, and not just President Trump, are trying to cast doubt on any negative news out there. I just happened to grab an example from President Trump, but he's by far not the only politician who would like us to believe that. And I did want to just go over real quick why we do create fake news. Fake news is created to hoax, to entertain, as in the Onion, to make money. You often see ads on the side of fake news pages, right? Where you click on this link, you get these people on the side in the alleys there get paid. And it's also created to influence our beliefs and our actions. So something a bit more nefarious. Okay. So who's confused? It does not discriminate by age. It does not discriminate by country. I do these presentations all around the world. Everybody is having trouble determining what's real and what's not. We like to say it's the problem of our kids, because why not blame them? It's easy. But it's not just for them, all of us. And you can see here that adults are even saying that some media literacy training would be helpful. So there's a three-player problem and a three-player solution. So this is the information cycle. The news producers are those who create news stories, they package it up, and they push it out to us. Now, news producers are not only professional journalists nowadays, but we're producers of information. But for today, we're just going to look at the professional producers. Then you have the news aggregators. Those are the tech platforms. So those are the ones who take the news stories and then push them back out to us. And then there's the news consumers. We're the third in that. News used to come directly from the producers to the consumer, normally on the platforms that they themselves owned. That has been changed with social media. They now have to go through these third-party platforms, and the business model is not there to sustain that, and we're starting to see some real issues with that. So news producers have some sloppy content they're producing, some sensational headlines to compete on these social media platforms, often blurring the line between fact and opinion. Yeah, can we agree on that? And that probably started with cable news. So they're blurring these lines, making it hard to tell what's fact and what's opinion. The news aggregators have these unseen algorithms. We have no idea really how they're working, sometimes how we're getting information, how we're being targeted with that information. And they too have a business model that can reward those purveyors of fake and false information. We also have bots who can take this information and amplify it, make it look like it's a bigger deal than it really is. When it was spread via newspaper, it took a little bit longer to get around. Fake news did, but now it can travel in seconds. News consumers are doing their best to control these fire hose amounts of information that are coming at us every day. And we are creating these echo chambers, some accidentally, some intentionally, but can you blame us? We somehow need to funnel this information so that we can actually deal with what's coming at us. But along in doing so, we've created bad habits, and we've stopped thinking critically. 59% of us will share a link, a story, without ever reading past the headline. You know, we're moving quickly. We're not taking time to think critically. That's always my message. For the love of things all holy. If you don't know if it's true or not, just don't share it. You're allowed to consume whatever you want, whatever perspective you're interested in. You can be entertained by the craziest of things. But if you don't know it's real, just let the information stop there. We can agree on that. So the solution, the news producers are now trying to be more transparent. They're trying to help the consumer by being more clear what's fact, what's opinion. They're also trying to help with these seals, saying that, you know, we have these seal of quality reporting, and they're putting that on their papers, you know, through the Trust Project and other efforts. And they're trying to get back to basics and remove bias from their reporting. How do you think they're doing? Yeah. There's some out there that maybe are doing a little bit better than others, but again, remember, it is a business model. But they are starting to work on these efforts and help out the consumer. News aggregators are trying to take away funding associated with spreading fake news. They're also trying to put flags on information to help us identify when something is been questioned. Do you remember what happened when Facebook put the flags on their stories that said this has been reported as fake news? It actually increased some of the sharing of that information. Some folks afraid that this was an effort to keep them from sharing quality information. So they're trying to do what they can, and they're making some efforts, but again, to having little headway. And news consumers, I think that's where us in this room, where we're helping. We have to teach them to be responsible. The personal responsibility falls on them, but we also have to share those skills. So we're working with students, which is a great place, a nice captive audience, but it's not new. You've been doing this for 30 years, right? I mean, this is not a new thing. People are just now paying attention to it. They think teachers are now just getting around to it. What's new are these platforms. That's what's different. But we have always been teaching media, news, information, whatever you call it. It's got many definitions, but that's something we've been doing. But we have to get beyond students, and we have to work on the adult population as well. So top-down interventions, we talked a little bit about some of the problems of top-down interventions. They do not always work. We know that 57% of voters in the US don't trust Facebook or Google. Why? Because they don't know how their algorithms work. I know that we think that we are participating more in our democracy now more than ever because we have access to these tools, but are we really if we don't understand how these platforms work? It's great, I love it. It's a tool where everyone has a platform, but if you don't know how it works, there's still that question, are we fully participating in that? A 2017 Gallup poll found that only 41% of US adults trust the media. That's not very good. Those numbers aren't great. Similarly, a 2018 report by the Knight Foundation in Gallup determined that the average media trust score in the U.S. at a scale of 0 to 100 was a 37. That's not very high. And that was based on the overall opinion of news media, perceptions of bias in news coverage, whether media were careful to separate news from opinion, and objectivity. Despite this, we're still seeing some government interventions now in trying to help with the media literacy issue, despite that this is something that adults around the world aren't necessarily very interested in. We're seeing these efforts happen. I want to share, we're seeing some work in Malaysia, in Kenya, UK, we're seeing some of these efforts, but I want to share an example, case study, WhatsApp. Anyone know what WhatsApp is? Some folks in here are using WhatsApp. It's a very popular international platform. During the recent 4G revolution in India, in about a 1.5 year period of time, 200 million new users came online, got internet access, and they're using this popular platform to share information. Well, it quickly became a platform to spread fake news, to spread disinformation, and they were seeing lots of mob killings based on some of the information that was being shared on fake information. What you know about WhatsApp, it's different from Facebook. But it has end-to-end encryption, so it's a little bit tougher to have the platform involved in flagging what's real or not. But the Indian government was upset and demanded that WhatsApp do something to fix it. In particular, they now said that you have to label messages as forwarded instead of composed by sender, hoping that would raise question about the source. You could limit your forwarding to 5 recipients, and that's in India, 20 in the rest of the world. Only group admins would be able to send messages, and now you can mark suspicious comments, so people in the chain could mark comments. After all these changes were made, and despite those, mob killings continued. So top-down solutions do not necessarily work. We all know that we don't want to see the top-down solution, especially government policy, because it stands to potentially impact our freedom of expression, an unintended consequence. Maybe you're not starting there, but that could be an unintended consequence. So our technology changes, and then we find new ways to spread misinformation, just like with WhatsApp. Top-down solutions try to solve these problems, but the trolls always find a workaround. They always find another way to get the information out. And we get into this vicious cycle, this loop, endless loop of trying to solve a problem with top-down. So the foundation of this problem, in my humble opinion, is consumer training. So there might be some policy that's needed of our tech companies. I get that. A little transparency. But without consumer training, we're not going to be able to fix it fully. And I see this as a large global campaign, not just a national campaign. Again, all over the world, the problems are the same. The fake news stories are different, but the issues are absolutely the same. And the way people are being manipulated is absolutely the same. So who is going to do this training? Who can we trust to do this training? I know a lot of programs see journalists as being the solution. Do we think journalists can be the solution? No. We've seen what the trust scores are, right? I think some journalistic principles are key, and we should be training. But what I'd love to see our journalists doing are help improve the quality of information that's going out. Help the consumers with getting them real information, real news. By improving that, that's going to help and empower them. Teachers, yes, it's a great source. They're already doing that. You guys have been doing it and should continue on doing that. Tech companies, they're trying to help here. And they say they don't want to be the arbiters of truth. They just want to be the platform and hands off. No, that's not key either. But I do think our tech companies can pay for the training. They have more than enough, right? Maybe they can help get it to the schools, get it to other organizations. Yeah, I do think that's where they can be helpful. And we do work a lot with Facebook. Facebook does support me quite a bit to put out resources. Everything that we do is free. We make sure that teachers never get charged. And you know how many people are like, no, we need to figure out a way to charge. If you look at how popular this stuff is, I'm like, they're not your cash cow. The teachers are not the ones who are going to make you rich on these resources. Stop trying to charge the teachers. You know, so I'm out to work and I'm going to keep it free always, as that's my goal. As I know you guys are out there scrounging, scrimping, and saving. But how about nonprofits and museums, like the museum? People trust museums, right? They see 98% of the population see museums as educational. And so as a repository of information, as public education experts, we can help on these efforts. We can help support the teachers, as we do, and we do public programs as well for adults. I'm doing programs in public libraries all around the nation, trying to get to some of those adults. Sometimes we do it under the guise of this is so you can help your children or your grandchildren, be better consumers, but we know that they need some help along the way as well. So, before we started building all of our content, we went to the teachers. I surveyed 1,400 teachers, new to us and some familiar with us, on what their needs were on media literacy in the classroom. I figured that is always a great place to start. Here is what some of your peers were telling us. Does this, take a second to look at that, does that hold true? What do you think? Yeah. Are these some of the things that you're seeing? Well, so we took these and started developing our content. And we wanted to move beyond